Ladies and gentlemen, if you find it hard to sit alone in a quiet room without reaching for your phone, this message is for you. Most people believe boredom is an enemy, to be slain with endless scrolling, constant chatter, or new goals to chase. But what if boredom is not a void to escape, but a doorway, an invitation to return to yourself? Stay with me till the end, because hidden in your dullest moments is a secret that can change how you see life and sharpen your focus like nothing else. When was the last time you did absolutely nothing? Not planning your next task, not filling the silence with noise, just being. The modern mind, addicted to stimulation, fears that pause more than anything. And yet, inside that pause lives your lost power, attention unchained from chaos. We have forgotten how to be idle on purpose. We think idleness is waste, but look at children lying on grass, tracing clouds into dragons and kingdoms. In their boredom, entire worlds bloom. The mind, when unshackled from constant doing, becomes a garden. Let weeds grow. The wildflowers of insight are hidden among them. There, most people run from boredom because it feels uncomfortable. But that discomfort is only the noise of your restless mind confronting itself. Sit with it. Feel it crawl under your skin. Stay a little longer. In that awkward silence, you'll discover thoughts you've buried beneath busyness, ideas you never finished, dreams you abandoned, truths you didn't want to hear. It is here, in the heart of boredom, that you reclaim focus, moment by moment. The mind quiets, the breath deepens, the senses wake. You begin to see the world as it is, not as your distractions disguise it. One moment of true boredom is worth more than an hour of shallow entertainment. When you surrender to doing nothing, you train yourself to be fully present. You notice the ticking of the clock, the rustle of leaves, the simple rhythm of your heartbeat. These small miracles slip by unnoticed when you flee from boredom. And with each moment of presence, your mind learns to rest, recover, and grow sharper. Do not mistake this for laziness. It is an art, the art of productive boredom, a discipline of non-action that feeds your creativity and strengthens your focus. The world wants you always busy, always consuming. But when you choose boredom consciously, you rebel. You take back your mind. The next time boredom visits, don't rush to kill it. Sit down with it like an old friend. Watch your restless thoughts. Smile at them. Let them pass. In that stillness, you'll find a clarity you cannot buy, a focus you cannot force. Reclaim your focus, one boring moment at a time. And you'll discover that the boredom you feared is the wellspring of all that truly matters. We live in an age that despises boredom, and yet, behind this fear of emptiness hides one of the most overlooked treasures of being alive. Most of us spend our days trying to outrun it, scrolling endlessly, filling the silence with background noise, packing every free moment with some new distraction. Believe boredom is a sign that something is wrong, that we're missing out, falling behind, or simply not trying hard enough to make life interesting. But what if this boredom we dread is actually a door, quietly waiting to be opened? A doorway into parts of ourselves that constant stimulation has smothered into silence. As children, we understood this without knowing it. A child bored on a long afternoon does not stay bored for long. Given a stick, a patch of dirt, or an empty room, The child's imagination fills the space with stories and adventures. Boredom becomes a canvas for possibility. But as adults, we lose this wonder. We decide that an idle mind is a dangerous thing, or at the very least, a wasted opportunity. So we crowd our schedules and drown our minds in trivial tasks, convinced we are being productive when really we are just avoiding ourselves. The forgotten value of boredom lies in what happens when we stop running from it. When we dare to sit in a quiet room with no agenda, no screen to swipe, no plan to hatch, something remarkable begins to unfold. At first, it is uncomfortable, even painful. The mind, used to its diet of constant input, rebels. It wanders, it fidgets, it tempts you with distractions, a new message, a snack, a sudden impulse to reorganize your desk. Anything but this silent meeting with yourself. But if you stay, if you allow the boredom to stretch out its legs, you begin to notice what lies beneath. Thoughts you've pushed away for months or years come floating up like driftwood. The mind begins to reveal its secret patterns. Worries you never questioned, desires you never voiced, dreams you half remembered. And in this quiet excavation, something shifts. The mind, given the space to roam without pressure, starts to wander in unexpected directions. You find connections between ideas you thought were unrelated. You remember things you forgot you knew. Your imagination, starved by too much busyness, takes its first real breath. This is where boredom becomes productive. Not because you force it to be, but because you let it be. True creativity rarely appears when we're frantically trying to summon it. It slips in when the mind is loose, idle, drifting without a goal. Many of the greatest ideas in history did not appear under the bright light of forced concentration, but in moments of apparent nothingness. A long walk, a bath, a lull between tasks. The forgotten value of boredom is that it gives your mind room to play. And it's not just about ideas. Boredom reconnects us with life's subtler details. When we're not absorbed in the next notification or the next distraction, we start to notice the world again. We hear the sound of birds outside the window, the whisper of the wind, the small rhythms that shape a day. We remember what it feels like to be present, not racing ahead, not replaying the past, just here. In this way, boredom becomes a teacher, showing us how to rest in the simple fact of being alive. But this art is not easily reclaimed. It asks for courage, the courage to resist the pull of the instant fix, the quick hit of novelty that modern life sells us at every turn. It asks us to face the restless parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid. It asks for patience, too, because the mind, conditioned to constant noise, does not quiet down at once. It will kick and squirm and demand distraction like a child denied candy. But if you wait, if you breathe, if you refuse to run, something softer appears. A spaciousness that makes room for focus, clarity, and the deep work of the heart. In a culture that measures worth by how busy you are, choosing to be bored on purpose is a small act of rebellion. It is a gentle refusal to be consumed by consumption. It is a way of saying to the world, my mind is not your playground, it is mine. And sometimes the best thing I can do for it is to do nothing at all. The next time you feel boredom creeping in, do not reach for the easy escape. Sit down with it. Make friends with it. Let it show you what you have forgotten about yourself. Inside that emptiness lies a quiet power, a secret well of insight and imagination that can only be tapped when we remember the forgotten value of simply being bored. Noise is the companion we never asked for, yet cling to more desperately than anything else. It's everywhere, buzzing in our pockets, flashing on our screens, humming from our speakers, pouring through our headphones. We wear it like armor, as if silence were some lurking predator waiting to swallow us whole. But this endless noise is not harmless. It is a subtle tyrant that rules our minds, stealing our attention inch by inch until we can't remember how to sit still without craving the next hit of distraction. Noise addiction is a modern plague so disguised as normal that we hardly see it for what it is. The moment there's a pause, a line at the store, a red light, a quiet moment before bed, we reach for it reflexively. A quick scroll through headlines we'll forget in seconds. A video that auto-plays before we can think twice. A song to drown out the hum of our own thoughts. In these small, ordinary moments, our capacity for deep focus is quietly drained away. We fool ourselves into thinking this constant input makes us informed, connected, entertained, and maybe it does in small doses. But when every spare moment is filled with noise, we lose the ability to hear the deeper voices within us, the faint ideas that need space to grow, the subtle awareness that blooms only in stillness. We become restless in the absence of noise, anxious in the presence of silence, suspicious of quiet like it's some empty threat. This addiction runs deeper than we admit. It shapes how we move through the day. We stack tasks on top of each other, working with music playing, eating while watching, walking while scrolling. Rarely are we fully present with one thing. Our attention flickers like a dying light bulb, split 1,000 ways until it can no longer shine on anything for long. And then we wonder why we can't focus, why we feel scattered and drained. The reason is simple. Focus is impossible when your mind is never allowed to rest. Noise addiction feeds on novelty. It trains the brain to crave constant updates. Something new, something shocking, something quick. Each new ping and post gives us a tiny spike of stimulation, enough to satisfy the moment, but never enough to nourish us deeply. And so we want more. The cycle repeats until we can no longer sit alone in a quiet room without feeling an itch under our skin. A compulsion to check, to consume, to fill the silence. Yet underneath this constant chatter lies a simple truth. The mind longs for depth. It longs to settle like silt in a clear pond. It longs to follow a thought to its end instead of abandoning it for the next shiny distraction. But we starve this longing every time we reach for noise. The instant boredom threatens to appear. It's not that noise itself is evil. Music can uplift, stories can inspire, connection can heal. But when we become addicted to constant input, we lose the balance that makes these gifts meaningful. As the beauty of a song fades when there is never any silence to frame it. The impact of a good story is dulled when it's just one more clip lost in an endless scroll. To reclaim our minds, we must relearn the forgotten art of turning the noise off. This is not easy. It means noticing the moments when we habitually reach for distraction. It means resisting the impulse to drown out a quiet room. It means choosing to be fully present with a task instead of splitting our attention between 5. and it means being willing to feel the discomfort that silence brings at first, the restless twitch, the craving for something, anything, to fill the space. But here's the reward. When the noise dies down, our true focus begins to return. Like eyes adjusting to the dark, the mind learns to see again, not in flashing fragments, but in whole, steady light. Ideas that were buried beneath the noise begin to surface. Tasks that felt overwhelming become manageable when given full attention. The world slows down, not in a dull, lifeless way, but in a way that makes each moment fuller, more vivid, more real. Noise addiction thrives because we are afraid of what silence might reveal. But in truth, silence reveals us to ourselves, and that is where all real power lies. If you want to reclaim your focus, you must first reclaim your moments of quiet. Let the noise fade. Sit in the stillness that remains. And there you will find the attention you thought you had lost, waiting patiently to be remembered. Most people think boredom is just a dead space, a dull ache in the middle of a busy day that must be patched up with something, anything to keep the mind entertained. But hidden inside that uneasy quiet is something we've forgotten how to touch. The fertile ground where ideas, self-awareness grow. Stillness, to most, feels like a threat. We sit alone in a quiet room, and within seconds we fidget for our phone, reach for a screen, or drift off into mindless daydreams. It feels unnatural to do nothing, like we're wasting precious time. Yet if you look closely, you'll see that stillness is never truly empty. It's a canvas that waits patiently for us to remember how to paint on it again. When was the last time you just sat and stared out the window, without trying to solve a problem or plan your next move? When did you last let your thoughts drift like clouds, instead of corralling them into boxes and checklists? We have trained ourselves to treat every free moment as an opportunity to do more, learn more, consume more, but the mind is not a machine that grows sharper the more you feed it raw data. It is a garden, and gardens need fallow seasons, moments of rest and emptiness, so that the soil can renew itself, hidden seeds can germinate, and unexpected blossoms can appear. When you allow yourself to reconnect with stillness, you begin to see that boredom is not a void, but a space of possibility. In that space, the mind stretches out. It wanders down old, forgotten pathways and discovers new ones, branching off in surprising directions. These quiet moments of nothingness become the birthplace of ideas that could never squeeze through the noise of a busy mind. The next time you have a flash of inspiration in the shower, or an unexpected insight while staring at the ceiling before sleep, remember, it did not come from the noise. It came from the stillness you accidentally allowed. Modern life trains us to resist this. We've built a world where stillness feels almost suspicious. If you are not doing something visible, measurable, or shareable, it's easy to feel like you're falling behind. We chase the next task, the next article, the next bit of entertainment to fill the silence. And in doing so, we flatten our own depths. We rob ourselves of the inner room, where our best thoughts, our truest intuitions, and our gentlest realizations wait. Stillness does not produce instant results. That's why it feels unproductive at first. The modern mind wants proof, something to tick off a list, a number to point to, an outcome to flaunt. But the gifts that stillness offers are slow-growing and subtle. They show up as a calm clarity that seeps into your work. a quiet confidence in decisions that no frantic brainstorming could give you, a sudden creative leap when you least expect it, born not of effort, but of an inner looseness, cultivated by moments of intentional pause. Reconnecting with stillness is also about learning to trust yourself again. Trust that when you stop forcing thoughts and simply watch them pass, what needs to rise will rise. Trust that your mind has depths you can't bully into giving up their treasures. You can only make space for them to surface when they're ready. Try it for yourself. Next time you catch yourself drifting into boredom, resist the urge to fill it. Sit with it instead. Let your mind wander like a curious child in a field. Notice how it circles familiar worries, then grows tired of them and moves on to something lighter, freer. Watch how ideas drift in, half-formed, waiting for you to see them. This is not wasted time. This is the secret work happening underground while you appear to be doing nothing at all. The beauty of this art is that it asks so little of you. You don't need a silent retreat in the mountains. You don't need an elaborate ritual. You need only a few stolen minutes here and there. A quiet cup of tea without a podcast in the background, a walk without your phone, a moment staring at the sky instead of your screen. These tiny invitations to stillness reconnect you with the fertile space inside. They remind you that what you seek, clarity, ideas, a stronger focus, is not out there in the noise, but waiting in the quiet you've been taught to fear. The next time you feel boredom creeping in, pause, breathe. Remember that this emptiness is not emptiness at all. It's the soil where your best self grows. It is the silence that gives shape to every note you play in the world. It is the art of reconnecting with a stillness so deep that the noise of life can never truly drown it out. When was the last time you allowed yourself to simply watch your own thoughts drift by, like leaves carried downstream? Most of us don't know how to sit still without an agenda, without trying to squeeze every moment for some visible gain. We even turn meditation, the simplest form of stillness, into another goal, something to master, to optimize, to get right. But there is a subtle power in observing without expectation. In the soft art of sitting with boredom, you train your mind not to chase every impulse or outcome. You discover a freedom that doesn't come from what you accomplish, but from what you no longer cling to. Our daily lives are built around expectation. We expect results, we expect answers, we expect entertainment on demand, and so we enter even the quiet moments with the same hunger. We sit in silence but secretly hope for a flash of genius, a moment of peace, some immediate sign that we're doing it correctly. This craving for outcome turns stillness into another chore, another arena for self-judgment. But boredom, when welcomed honestly, strips this away. It leaves you with nothing but what is: the wandering mind, the restless body, the itch to move, to do, to solve. Sit long enough and you'll notice that your mind is a storyteller. It weaves worries, plans, memories, and what-ifs together, offering them to you like a street vendor hawking cheap trinkets. Most days we buy every story it sells. We get tangled in thoughts about what could go wrong, what should have gone right, what we must do next. But when you practice observing without expectation, you begin to see these stories for what they are. Passing clouds with no substance, unless you reach up and try to hold them. In boredom, your task, is not to push these thoughts away, nor is it to cling to the pleasant ones and reject the uncomfortable. Your task is to watch them come and go, to see how effortlessly they rise and fade when you stop feeding them your attention. This simple watching builds a discipline stronger than any forced focus. You learn, moment by moment, that you are not the endless chatter in your head. You are the sky that holds it all, unchanged and untouched by what drifts through. This kind of open awareness sharpens your mind in ways that forced concentration cannot. When you stop expecting something profound to happen, you notice the subtle things instead, the quiet insight that slips in when you're not straining for it, the gentle realization that makes you smile for no reason, the hidden tension in your shoulders that melts when you remember you don't have to be anywhere but here. You start to taste the sweetness of being present with no goal beyond the moment itself. Observation without expectation is also an antidote to the hidden frustration we carry when things don't go our way. So often, our plans falter, not because they're flawed, but because we cling to a specific idea of how they must unfold. We fight reality every time it fails to match our inner script. But when you train yourself to sit with boredom, truly sit with it, you learn to drop this script, even for a few minutes. You see that life keeps flowing, whether you wrestle with it or not. And from this, a strange freedom grows, the freedom to be surprised, to be bored without resenting it, to watch your mind spin its wheels, and know you don't have to chase after it, to discover that the best moments often arrive when you've stopped demanding them. This is how the practice of simple observation feeds your deeper focus. By loosening your grip on what should be, it opens you to what is. Try it sometime. Sit alone, no distractions, and let your mind do what it does. Watch your thoughts rise like bubbles in a still pond. Don't pop them. Don't hold them. Just watch. Some will burst quickly, and others will drift lazily before dissolving on their own. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to become anything. In this, you remember that your mind is a river, not a prison. You are not bound by its flow. You are the witness to it. The art of observation without expectation turns boredom from an enemy into a teacher. It reveals that stillness isn't dead space, but a living, breathing moment where your mind returns to its natural state, open, aware, unhurried. And when you carry this into the rest of your life, something shifts. You find yourself less reactive, less tangled in every passing worry. You discover that real focus doesn't come from fighting distraction, but from seeing it clearly, without clinging or resisting. The next time you feel that restless boredom creeping in, don't grab for the nearest distraction. Sit. Watch. Let your mind chatter, spin, quiet down, and rise again. Expect nothing, and in that nothing, you'll find the gentle freedom you've been seeking all along. Boredom is uncomfortable because it reveals what we spend so much of our energy trying to outrun. We fear it not because it is empty, but because it shines a cold light on how addicted we've become to noise, to busyness, to distractions that spare us from sitting with our own thoughts. When boredom settles in, it feels like an itch under the skin, an invitation to check your phone, turn on the TV, scroll through anything, just to push away that creeping sense of nothingness. But if you resist that first reflex to escape, boredom becomes a mirror. It shows you what lies beneath your constant doing your restlessness, your impatience, and the hidden compulsions that steer your days without you even noticing. Most people never see this. The moment discomfort appears, they bolt. They fill the silence so quickly that the truth buried in it never has a chance to speak. But if you sit with boredom, truly sit with it, letting it wash over you like a cold wave, you begin to notice how your mind squirms. It drags you through old memories, petty worries, imagined conversations. It tries to lure you into something, anything, to keep you from staying in that stark, uneventful now. Yet this very discomfort is the gateway. Inside it lies a rare chance to observe your mind's deepest habits. The impulse to pick up your phone for no reason, that is a glimpse of your craving for distraction. The restless leg bouncing under the table, that is your body echoing the mind's refusal to settle, the sudden flood of old regrets or unfinished plans. These are not random thoughts. They're the backlog you've ignored by staying perpetually occupied. To sit still with this is not easy. It takes more courage than most people ever realize. Because it's not a fight against boredom. It's a quiet turning toward yourself. You begin to see how much of your life is driven not by clear intention, but by the constant avoidance of discomfort. We keep busy, so we don't have to feel certain feelings. We grow mindlessly, so we don't have to face certain truths. Boredom exposes all of this, not to shame you, but to wake you up to the patterns that run you like a puppet. Once you see these hidden compulsions, you can't unsee them. The next time your hand twitches toward your phone in a moment of silence, you'll catch yourself. You'll notice the reflex to fill the pause with a podcast, a video, a half-hearted conversation, just to dodge the stillness. And with that awareness comes choice. You can put the phone down. You can let the silence stretch a little longer. You can lean into the discomfort instead of covering it up. This is where boredom stops being a dead space and starts being a space of transformation. In the quiet discomfort, you learn about your own mind, its fears, its addictions, its ceaseless hunger for novelty, and in learning, you gain power over it. The next time you feel an urge to distract yourself, you'll see it for what it is. Just an urge, not a command. You don't have to obey. You can watch it rise, watch it peak, and watch it pass, like a wave that crashes and dissolves back into the sea. In this way, boredom becomes a practice ground for freedom. Every moment, you stay with it. You train yourself to be less reactive, less enslaved to old patterns. You begin to build a mind that can rest in stillness without panic. A mind that can focus deeply because it no longer flinches at the first sign of discomfort. What's more, this practice doesn't stay locked in your quiet moments alone. It seeps into the rest of your life. You find yourself less rattled when delays happen, when plans fall through, when the world refuses to entertain you. You become more patient with yourself and with others. You discover a quiet strength that isn't built on constant activity, but on your willingness to be still in the face of your own mind. Boredom is not your enemy. It is the teacher you've been avoiding, one who holds up a mirror to show you the restless parts of yourself that long for your attention. Sit with it. Watch what arises. Feel how the discomfort swells and softens if you don't run from it. And know that every time you choose to stay instead of flee, you reclaim a little more of your focus, a little more of your freedom, a little more of yourself. The world will always offer you an escape, but what you're really longing for is to come home, to a mind unafraid of its own depths, to a self strong enough to sit alone and be at peace with whatever rises from the quiet. We often imagine focus as something grand and dramatic, a heroic act of sitting down for hours at a stretch, wrestling with distractions until we finally conquer our restless minds. But the truth is, focus is not forged in giant leaps. It's built quietly, reclaimed, piece by piece, in the smallest, most overlooked pockets of our day. The moments you spend waiting for your coffee to brew, standing in line, riding an elevator, these tiny slices of idle time are usually sacrificed to the altar of mindless scrolling and background noise. But hidden within them is a secret. They are micro moments of presence, each one a chance to remember how to come home to yourself. Most people never notice how these slivers of boredom shape the mind. The instant there is a pause, we reach for stimulation, checking messages, refreshing feeds, glancing at headlines that rarely matter. An hour later. Each time we do this, we train the mind to fear emptiness. We teach it that silence must be filled, that waiting must be entertained, that every second must produce something. If not a task completed, then at least a quick dopamine hit to keep the restless mind at bay. And slowly, without realizing it, we lose the muscle that lets us sit calmly with nothing happening at all. But what if you reclaimed just a handful of these micro moments each day? Instead of filling every pause with noise, you could let it stay empty, just for a breath. Just long enough to notice what it feels like to be here. When you stand at a bus stop, feel the ground under your feet, the breeze on your face. When you wait for a file to load, resist the urge to check another tab. Watch your thoughts instead, like clouds passing overhead. When you sip your tea in the morning, leave your phone in another room. Listen to the quiet hum of the world waking up. These moments seem insignificant, but they are powerful. Each one is like a drop of water that slowly carves out the stone of your distraction. Over time, they build the foundation of a mind that is at ease with stillness. A mind that doesn't flinch when there's nothing to do for a few seconds. A mind that knows how to rest in the present, instead of hunting for the next hit of novelty. The beauty of these micro moments is that they cost nothing. You don't need to book a retreat or clear a weekend. You don't need to buy special cushions or candles. All you need is the willingness to notice the pauses you usually race past. It might feel pointless at first, standing in line without your phone, staring out the window instead of at a screen. But pay attention to what happens. Your breath slows down. Your thoughts loosen their frantic grip. You start to see how often you move on autopilot, always seeking the next distraction before you've even finished the last one. These small moments of boredom are like seeds. Each one you tend grows into a habit of presence. You begin to notice more how sunlight falls through the leaves, how your mind jumps from thought to thought, how you feel when you're not numbing yourself with constant input. And gradually this spills into the bigger parts of your day. You'll find it easier to focus on real work when it's time to work, because your mind has practiced being here, now, without grasping for escape. This practice is not about rejecting modern life or pretending we don't need our devices. It's about balance. It's about remembering that your attention is precious and fragile. And if you give it away in 1,000 tiny moments, you'll have nothing left for what truly matters. Reclaiming these micro moments is an act of quiet rebellion against a world that wants you always distracted, always consuming, always chasing the next thing, there is a simple power in looking at boredom not as an enemy, but as an ally, a gentle reminder to come back to your senses, to your breath, to the feeling of being alive. Each small pause is a doorway back to yourself. Each moment of doing nothing is a moment of training the mind to rest, to watch, to listen. And as these moments add up, you build a deeper, steadier focus that no amount of forced discipline can create on its own. Next time you catch yourself about to fill a pause with noise, pause a little longer instead. Let the quiet in. Notice the impulse to escape and smile at it. You don't need to obey it every time. In these tiny spaces of nothing, you are quietly reclaiming your focus, one breath, one heartbeat, one ordinary moment at a time. And this, perhaps, is the true art of productive boredom, not in what you do, but in how you learn, slowly and patiently, to simply be. Most people carry an invisible weight on their shoulders, the pressure to be constantly busy, always moving, always producing. We wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, telling ourselves that if we're busy, we must be important, needed, successful. But beneath this frantic doing is a truth too uncomfortable for most to admit. Much of our busyness is just noise in disguise. It is a clever way to avoid stillness, because stillness can feel threatening. In the quiet, we might have to face questions we'd rather ignore. Who am I when I'm not doing? What do I really want? What parts of my life have I built on autopilot instead of intention? When you embrace boredom on purpose, you break this trance. You step outside the endless loop of productivity for productivity's sake, and remember that you are more than what you accomplish in a day. You see how much of your busyness is a cage, not a ladder, and in that seeing, you taste a freedom you may not have known you were missing. Doing nothing has a bad reputation. We call it laziness, idleness, wasted time. But doing nothing, when chosen consciously, is an act of reclaiming your mind from the tyranny of constant doing. It's not an escape from responsibility. It's a return to clarity about what actually matters. Because when you stop filling every gap with tasks and noise, you begin to see which parts of your life are truly necessary and which are distractions dressed up as duty. Think about how many things you do in a day that serve no real purpose beyond keeping you occupied. Endless to-do lists, mindless errands, constant checking of messages that could wait. We convince ourselves these things are urgent, but often they're just habits. Busyness is addictive because it keeps us feeling safe. Too busy to feel lonely. Too busy to doubt ourselves. Too busy to wonder if we're living the life we actually want. Boredom breaks this illusion. When you sit with it, the mind doesn't have the usual clutter to hide behind. It starts asking deeper questions. It notices the places where your life feels hollow or forced. It reveals the difference between movement and progress, between effort and alignment. In boredom, you remember what it feels like to simply be alive, without having to prove it through constant action. This is why boredom is not wasted time, but sacred time. When you stop doing, you start seeing. And what you see can change everything. Maybe you notice that some of your daily obligations aren't really yours at all. They're someone else's expectations you agreed to out of fear or habit. Maybe you realize that the thing you thought you had no time for, writing, painting, resting, dreaming, has been squeezed out by the noise of meaningless tasks. Maybe you glimpse the quiet truth that you've been living on the surface of your own life, skimming from one thing to the next, without ever sinking into the depth that makes life rich. When you begin to value these moments of nothingness, you also start to trust yourself more. You trust that you don't have to be constantly chasing and striving to be worthy or productive. You trust that the best ideas often come not when you force them, but when you create space for them to arrive on their own. You trust that life will not collapse if you sit still for a few minutes and do absolutely nothing. And something else happens too. The fear of missing out fades. You realize you're not missing out on anything when you're fully here. The world will keep spinning, the notifications will keep piling up, the chatter will never end. But in this moment of quiet boredom, you are free. Free from the craving for more, for faster, for constant proof that you're doing enough. Imagine what your days would feel like if you made a habit of embracing boredom. Not once a year on a vacation, but in small doses every day. A few minutes of sitting on the porch without your phone. A short walk with no destination except your own breath and footsteps. 5 minutes at your desk before the next task, staring out the window instead of jumping into another tab. These tiny rebellions against busyness teach you that your mind doesn't need to be constantly fed. It needs to rest. It needs to roam. It needs to remember that it is not a machine, but a living thing, capable of wonder and insight when given space to breathe. The next time you feel boredom creeping in, don't run from it. Don't smother it with tasks you don't really need to do. Let it sit beside you like an old friend. Listen to what it has to say. It might remind you that you are already enough, even when you're doing nothing at all. And in that reminder, you may find a freedom bigger than any amount of busy work could ever give you. There's a subtle wisdom hidden in the kind of boredom we usually rush to avoid. We think doing nothing is unproductive, that idleness is a threat to progress. We live in a world that worships motion. Faster, bigger, louder. But if you look closely, the most powerful changes in your mind and life don't always come from what you force yourself to do. They come from what you allow yourself to stop doing. This is the quiet power of non-action. And boredom, when welcomed instead of resisted, is its patient teacher. When you allow yourself to be bored, you're not giving up on life. You're stepping aside so that life can flow on its own for a while without you pushing and pulling at it. Most of us are taught from a young age to chase results, to squeeze something useful out of every moment. So even when we sit still, we secretly want something to happen. An idea, a breakthrough, a moment of clarity. But the art of productive boredom asks you to trust that you don't always have to chase outcomes for good things to grow. Non-action is not the same as inaction. It's not laziness or neglect. It's the deliberate choice to step back and create open space. It's giving your mind permission to soften its grip, to wander, to rest, to stitch together fragments of thought in ways that can't be forced by sheer effort. Think of the best ideas you've ever had. Did they come when you were desperately trying to solve a problem? Or did they arrive like a bird landing on your shoulder when you least expected it, on a quiet walk, a long shower, a moment of staring at the ceiling? This is the magic that happens when you allow non-action to do its subtle work. The power of non-action is that it dissolves the illusion that you control every piece of your life through force alone. It reminds you that sometimes stepping back is the most productive move you can make, Just as a muscle grows stronger not only when you train it, but when you rest it, your mind becomes clearer, not when you drown it in endless tasks, but when you let it breathe in open, aimless moments. When you consciously invite boredom into your day, you're pushing back against the constant demand to produce and prove. You're telling yourself that you trust your own mind to find its balance. This trust is radical in a world that profits from your constant distraction and busyness. It's a quiet rebellion, an inner stance that says, I am not just a worker, a doer, a producer. I am a living being. And living sometimes means pausing long enough to feel the pulse of life without trying to manipulate it. Think about nature. A tree doesn't grow by trying harder. It grows by being rooted in stillness, allowing sunlight and rain to do their work in time. The same is true for you. There are seasons when you act, push, build, and there must be seasons, sometimes only moments in a day, when you stop pushing, when you lean back into the gentle emptiness of boredom and let your deeper mind rearrange itself, settle, and make room for clarity to rise on its own. Non-action also reveals to you how little you actually need to interfere with everything. The world keeps turning whether you check your notifications or not. People survive if you don't reply to every ping in seconds. Your mind can untangle its own knots if you stop tugging at them so hard. This is the secret. Boredom becomes a quiet revolution because it proves you don't have to force every result. Some answers come not when you grasp for them, but when you let go. And the more you practice this, the more you trust it. You begin to see that your greatest focus and insight don't always come from grinding away at your thoughts, but from giving them space to breathe. One small moment of sitting with your mind, doing nothing, expecting nothing, can unlock an understanding that hours of effort could never produce. It's not magic. It's simply the natural rhythm of the mind when it's free from the tyranny of constant doing. The next time boredom knocks on your door, welcome it like a gentle visitor carrying a message. Sit with it, even for a minute longer than you normally would. Feel the discomfort fade into a subtle sense of openness. Notice the small shifts in your thoughts, the little glimmers of clarity. In that stillness, you're not wasting time. You're restoring your capacity to see clearly, to choose wisely, to act with intention when action is needed. This is the art of productive boredom at its highest form, not forcing life forward every second, but trusting that the spaces in between your efforts are fertile too. They nourish your mind, they sharpen your focus, and they remind you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply not do. And in that quiet space of non-action, you reclaim not just your focus, but your freedom to be here, fully alive, one moment at a time. Here we are, standing in the quiet that modern life has trained us to fear. All this time we've been told that boredom is the enemy, that stillness is wasted time, that doing nothing is for the lazy or the lost. But what if it's exactly the opposite? What if boredom is not a sign of lack, but a hidden gateway to depth? What if the moments you've been so quick to fill with noise and distraction are the same moments that hold the keys to your sharpest focus, your calmest mind, and your most honest self? In the restless world outside, they will keep telling you to hurry. They will sell you more stimulation, more noise, more ways to escape the awkward silence of your own thoughts. But you know now that every time you reach for easy distraction, you pay with pieces of your attention. pieces you could instead spend on the life you actually want to live. Boredom, when embraced, is not empty. It is a space where the mind can stretch out, breathe, and wonder. It's where scattered thoughts find each other and form new ideas. It's where clarity rises, not from force, but from permission to simply be, by reclaiming even the smallest pauses, those tiny, often ignored moments. You teach your mind to settle into itself again. You remember that you are not your distractions. You are not your busyness. You are the awareness beneath it all, capable of stillness, capable of presence. The next time boredom comes knocking, don't slam the door shut with a glowing screen or another urgent task. Invite it in. Sit with it. Let it show you the hidden patterns of your restless mind. Let it remind you that doing nothing, when chosen with intention, is not nothing at all. It's the art of coming home to yourself, one quiet moment at a time. In this practice, you reclaim your focus from the noise that wants to own it. You take back your time from the endless distractions that steal it. And you discover the deep, steady truth that the richest parts of you do not grow in constant motion, but in the fertile stillness you've been taught to fear. This is the art of productive boredom, the gentle courage to do less so that you can be more aware, more clear, more deeply alive. And in a world that wants you to be anywhere but here, there is nothing more radical or more powerful than that.